What is up, and welcome into the DFS Pawn Shop. My name is Eric. You can catch me on those Twitter streets at Fantasy Nav, and kicking it here with me, riding shotgun on a Saturday night, as always, is my dude, Mr. Mike Holland. Mike, how's it going tonight? How you feeling on
Hey,
this
man.
weird Saturday night?
Yeah, it's definitely weird. I got a whole new background. I'm in a whole new city. So, yeah, about. Yeah, you can find me on my Twitter handle in those Twitter streets, as we like to say, at MC Holland 34. Producing content, obviously, with NFL going for 2 live, as well as some Dr. Roto action for college basketball and NBA. And yeah, it's going to be a weird slate. So, I don't know. I guess we can break this down and see if we can't make a little bit of money out of this thing.
Yeah, we are going to pick it apart. Obviously, COVID has run wild through the NFL and kind of everywhere lately. I heard someone talking earlier today that in the last 7 days, the NFL has had more positive COVID cases than they had in the 14 weeks preceding it. So basically, everybody is catching the cocoa. We now have games that should have taken place earlier today that are on Monday, that should have been part of the main slate. Maybe some of the better games of the main slate have now been moved on to Tuesday and Wednesday and next Friday, and we don't really know. So that leaves us here with a tiny little 9-gamer. I think this is the smallest main slate that I can remember, except for like playoff stuff. But with that, with all of the COVID availability, with the smaller slate, I mean, there has to be a different overall. How are you thinking about knifing this slate up, Mike?
Playing one entry. No. Yeah, it's just going to be different for sure. I don't think we have a total over 50. So, yeah, it's really just trying to be different. A lot of players out, to go along with injuries. So, yeah, I think you can pretty much put together any type of roster you want this week. So it's going to be crucial to find, where you can leverage and be different to try to take down larger field tournaments. I think in the cash game, it's pretty simple this week. Just with the, only 9 games on the slate, there's, some places that you'll want to go to. So just kind of be one of those weeks where you just kind of have to try and survive in advance, I feel like.
Yeah, I've kind of got a similar mindset on it too, right? I mean, better games and better like point per dollar plays are off the board now. They're off the main slate at least. I definitely fired up my first ever Saturday through Tuesday lineups in my life earlier today. So trying to tap into those where I can, but
Oh, man.
Even with those set aside, like, I mean, there's enough value where you can kind of do whatever you want, and I think like a kind of like the balanced build is the way to go. Like, you're gonna have people doing wild shit with all of this value and all of these no name guys. Like, if you can get steady production out of your entire roster, I think you're in a really good spot to clear the pay line and potentially make a deep run in a tournament. But with that, we will dive right into our game by game breakdown. For those of you that are new here to the pawn shop, thanks for giving us a try. The way that we do things is we send our games into 3 different categories. The most desirable of which, the ones where we'll be spending the majority of our effort and the majority of our money, are those that are in the showcase. These are the primo games, and like a pawn shop in real life a week before Christmas, it's kind of looking a little picked over. So with our first showcase game on the board, we'll be chasing actually a team total as opposed to a game total. This game itself does have one of the better totals on the board. It is the Arizona Cardinals heading to Detroit to face off against the Lions. This is a 47.5 point total, right about where it opened. We see the Cardinals as a 12.5 point favorite. So that gives them one of the, actually looking at it now, the highest implied team total on the board at an even 30 points. with the Lions all the way down at 17.5. So obviously, Mike, this looks like it's going to be a one-sided affair. Sense of this game, this first one in our showcase.
Yeah, I think Kyler Murray's probably your cash game lock this week. 7,900. As you're missing Hopkins, looks like Connor's expected to play here at the questionable tag. He's got obviously Edmonds returning, so that'll be interesting to see how that shakes out since Detroit's run defense is very poor. So see, potential return here with potentially Edmonds, coming back here. So I don't mind playing Connor at 6,400. I think, obviously people get scared away from that questionable tag and just him potentially losing shares, but he's been pretty awesome recently. So I don't mind that play at all. Now the hard thing with Murray is always stacking. I used to say earlier in the year that just stack him with Hopkins and move on. So you're gonna be looking at Christian Kirk, AJ Green. I don't mind either one, I guess. Detroit's not very good, and so you're going to find some fantasy points on the Arizona side. I do like Arizona's defense as well. I mean, it's 4K. Not something I usually like to do, but I don't mind them this week paying up at defense since there's so much value and so many quirky things that could happen this week. And for me I don't really know that I want much on the. It's pretty ugly here on this side. So I just, if I'm playing this game, I'm probably playing it one-sided. I don't know that I really want to attack this type of game as a game stack. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be the case with this game and with a lot of the games this week, right? Like, almost every single one of the games on the board has a heavy favorite out there, right? So run back itself is probably going to be a less frequently utilized strategy. If you want to get different, I mean, I think the only real play here is taking a look at throwing a dart at one of these Detroit pass catchers. We've seen Josh Reynolds pop a little bit. Amon-Ra St. Brown has been coming on of late, right? So, like, you can get some salary relief in a game script where they're certainly going to be throwing, and you'll be, one of 2 or 3% of the field that has them. But that's, not exactly something that looks appealing, and I'm probably looking for a different spot to take a chance on one of the underdogs. Where I wanted to get your thoughts specifically, Mike, is around this Arizona ground game, right? Officially today, it has been activated off of the IR. We're still waiting for definitive word on James Conner, but they walk into a matchup against Detroit that is allowing almost 30 DraftKings points per game on the ground, or rather 2 opposing running backs. So very favorable situation. What's the news that you're looking for here? Because I've got somewhat of a take, and I want to know if you're rolling with me.
Man, yeah. I mean, obviously, if Connor's out, I mean, I'm just jamming in as much Edmonds as I can at 5,100. They both play. He's going to get the goal line carries. He's been useful in the passing game. So, obviously Detroit's run defense is something that you want to attack. I mean, who are you looking at in this one between the two?
Yeah, so this is a place where I think I'm kind of field. If Connors is out, maybe one of the 2 or 3 chalkiest players at the position, right? I almost want Edmonds more if Connors is playing, because I think that drives his ownership way down, right? He'll probably be somewhere in that like 8 to 12 range, just given that he's, 5K. And ultimately, I think we see him step back into a pretty considerable role, at least relative to what he had before. And given that Connors is a bit hobbled after that Monday night game, and they should be up by a considerable amount, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him get his workload walked back a little bit. So I kind of want him to be on the board and available so that it steers more people off of Edmonds, because that's really the one of the two that I'm more excited about firing up.
Yeah, I can see that. And Edmonds does good work in the passing game too. So, especially that price tag's pretty appealing. If he could rip one off, it's going to be a pretty nice day.
At least. So like we said, bit of a one-sided affair, and with that we will carry forward to, surprise, surprise, another one-sided affair. Here we've got a 1:00 game with the Dallas Cowboys heading to New Jersey to play the G-Men. 44.5-point total. This one has come down by about 2.5 points, largely to do with the availability or lack thereof of Daniel Jones and several other players here for the Giants. Right now, we've got the Cowboys as 11.5-point favorites. That leaves them with an implied total at an even 28, and the Giants at 16.5. So another one-sided affair. Dallas certainly didn't play up to the standard that most of us were hoping for over the last few weeks. Now they have a situation where they should be able to establish a lead and feel pretty comfortable with that. Where are you looking to attack with this game, Mike?
Yeah, I'm all on the Dallas side, right? I mean, the Cowboys defense, 3,600. We saw what they did last week. I mean, they're fully healthy up front. Micah Parsons, I mean, that guy's a monster. So definitely looking to have them as part of my, the defensive locks here. So that's something really got a lot of Dak Prescott this week. Everyone's down on him. There's question marks. Is he healthy? Fully healthy? Just hasn't really performed well in 2 of the last 3 games. And it's at 6,500, and it makes me like him a lot. As far as, who I'm going to stack him with, I do like Cooper, do like Lamb. I do like Lamb probably in this matchup. He's just getting so many looks, and he's a situation with everything going on Pollard, and then Zeke kind of getting limited touches here. So I do like Lamb to go with Prescott here. So definitely something I'm looking to get creative with. On the Giants side, man, it's just Daniel Jones out. Mike Glennon's just a statue, which was the reason why I like the Cowboys defense. They should feast on him, standing back there like a statue. I mean, Saquon Barkley, 6,500, and I just don't know if he can get it. It's just kind of one of those things. It's like, man, you want a game stack, but it's just having a hard time, like, plugging my finger on someone that from the Giants side. Galladay's a little interesting at his price point, but it's like, can Glennon get him the ball? So I don't know. Do you have someone on the Giants side that you're looking at?
I mean, I think the only person to really take a look at on the Giants side is Saquon Barkley, but that doesn't necessarily make him a good play, right? He's just the best of a bunch of bad options. He's the king of the dipshits, as we would put it in movie lore. For me, there was a point where it looked like Sterling Shepard was heading towards being available, and then he popped up with a calf injury at practice yesterday. So now he's off the board. I don't really have any faith in this coaching staff to find ways to get Kenny Golladay involved. So, like our last game, I think it's more about the one side. What I'm a bit curious about, at least over these last 4 or 5 weeks, you've generally been on the side of just playing whichever of the Cowboys receiver is less expensive, right? And here you've broken that form. CeeDee Lamb is $1,000 more than Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper has come up to $6,400. Is it just that you think Cooper's price is a bit too high, or do you think that $1,000 isn't enough to justify the difference in how much volume they see? Maybe on that call in particular.
Yeah, I think obviously just the targets that CD's been getting and some of the work and, a couple of carries here over the last couple of games. And he's got 23 targets in the last 2 games. So, getting looks early and often, he's a red zone threat out of that slot position. And I think that this week I'm not going to have trouble getting him into my lineup. So that makes me like him a little bit more. I usually like Cooper when he's cheaper because he's going to get that salary savings that you can use it this week. I'm just going to go with the better player on this one.
The other guy I wanted to talk to you about is old hurt knee himself, Mr. Ezekiel Elliott. Whether or not Pollard is available, it seems like he's got a pretty consistent role. It's probably not a big enough role to just $7,500, $7,300 price tag. But given his struggles of late and how much they're expected to be leading, I mean, he's gonna be way underowned, right? Like he's got to be in that like 4 to 6% range. I mean, if he pops off and you're throwing darts in big fields, is that ultimately something that you can potentially ride to the top of the pay list, or do you think it's a bit too risky with that knee still flared up?
Man, usually I would like this, but I got burned by you gotta get into the 20s with that to really be competitive. So the game environment's looking like the Giants are going to struggle on offense. Prescott should be able to do a few things here with his receivers, and I just don't know that they're going to need him that much. So we saw last game, they were willing to give Clement the ball. So he's kind of a stay away, but I completely get it because I just don't think anybody's going to. I guess. You're just kind of looking for that dart, but it just doesn't make a ton of sense.
Yeah, it won't feel good clicking it, right? And I think that's part of the point, right? Like everything about this game situation sets up to where it should be a positive spot for him. But to your point about Clement, I mean, for that weird, most of the third quarter, I guess is a better way to put it, when Dallas was comfortably ahead and should have been salting the game away, it was all Corey Clement, right? It wasn't until that Prescott pick where Washington was back in it last week, where Zeke got some more touches. So just because they're a big favorite, I don't think that necessarily dictates that we'll see Zeke getting a bunch of garbage time away the clock. They would probably let him rest, whether it's with Clemens or if Pollard can be available. So probably off the ground game. On the Dak call, I think I like Dak a bit more if Pollard is available, just because the balance in that offense should give him a bit more room to work as a passer. But I mean, ultimately, Dallas should win this one pretty comfortably, and there should be enough for at least a handful of guys to eat here against the Giants.
Yeah, for sure. Are you ready to move on?
Yep. We will head to our last stop here in the showcase. We are going to the afternoon block. We have a 4:05 game between the Atlanta Falcons heading to San Francisco to face off against the 49ers. We're looking at a 46-point total. This one has come down 1.5 points since opening at 47.5. San Francisco is leading all the way. They've actually expanded their lead. They're all the way up to a 9.5-point favorite. That gives them a 27.75 implied total, and Atlanta all the way down at 18.25. So back in the afternoon block, Atlanta is very much so in a position to be outclassed here. Obviously, San Francisco is dealing mainly with availability questions around their running back room. Their receivers, including George Kittle himself, look to be back in at full strength and available. Any plays in this one that really stand out for you as ones that you would maybe even consider a lock button?
Well, I mean, George Kittle, pretty ridiculous. I mean, 37 fantasy points, 42 fantasy points. I mean, the guy's just getting monster target totals here the last couple of games. 7,500, man, that's a pretty hefty price to pay. I think it is a way to be different since tight end has been a position all year that people have wanted to punt. So I don't mind it here. Deebo Samuel, 8,200, pretty expensive, but getting the job done. Great last week, but you see the 20 to 30 point upside. So I don't mind it. This is more of a one-off side. I'm not going to want to stack Jimmy G with with these guys, just because Shanahan does like to run the ball. He does use Deebo in the running game. They like to use check too. So there's a lot of vultures that are out here for San Francisco. So, I'm really just as far as the Atlanta side. I guess at some point we just have to start playing Cordero Patterson instead of making fun of him, right? Like he's like a thing this year.
Start playing him.
You've been playing him. Oh my god. 6,900. I mean, large field, go ahead, but it's just not for me in smaller tournaments and cash game. Matt Ryan, 5,300. Like I wish he could be good at football again, but doesn't seem like that's going to be the case anymore. So I would like to know why he's priced at 5,800. I don't care that, anyway, that's a whole nother story. But I'm just really looking at the side of the 49ers here for the Niners side here on some one-offs. What about you?
Yeah, so I think there are actually a couple of interesting spots here. While I have certainly been playing Cordell Patterson here and there, Cordell Patterson at 7K is never the ever. He can
until you say that
break the right way. Yeah, right. But yeah, I mean, it's just there's a lot of volatility in his game, right? He has been getting there just about every single week, but it's on like a 45% snap share or so. So you're taking a lot of risk by firing him up. They're specifically at that price tag, right? When he was the butt of jokes at $4,900 and $5,400, like let's go, right? But we're not there here in this moment. So very much so a risky play. Where I wanted to get your thoughts. I mean, look, you'll always have to worry about injury with this player, but Jeff Wilson is going to get 70% of the carries out of this backfield, and he's 5K. Like they're in a game where they should lead. I mean, why wouldn't I play this guy at essentially harder?
You know exactly why.
Tell me.
Because he's basically Jeff Wilson is basically the West Coast version of Miles Sanders here. So, he's going to get the carries here. I mean, even when he's gotten the carries, he hasn't done much with it. I mean, 13 carries last game, 56 yards, like 5.6 fantasy points. Like, but you're just not getting anything. He hasn't even scored a touchdown. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, this will be the week. Obviously, he scores 2 touchdowns. So go ahead and lock him in, and I'll just you can send me the victory. You can send me the victory text after that. But I can't, man. Like I won't.
Yeah, I mean, look, like he still gets a good amount of work in the red zone. He's going to be their primary ball carrier, and in this 5K range, there are 7 guys who are going to get ownership before he does. So if you can't tell, Mike, or anyone who's out there listening, with this week getting weird, I'm just leaning all the way in. I'm going to get weird with it. And I think he's worth a couple of dart throws out there. The other thing I wanted to get your thoughts on, you mentioned Deebo and Kittle being the primary focus for you in this game. I mean, Deebo is now the second most expensive wide receiver on the board. You've got Kittle out here as the most expensive tight end and more expensive than many of the wide receivers out there. I mean, in a week where there's a lot of value, do you think there's something to be said for having a really unique roster construction and firing those two dudes up together?
Yeah, I don't think you can fire them up together because you're gonna have to play Garoppolo. But maybe that's a thing this week. I don't know. I like one or the other. Yeah, I really like Kittle. I mean, he's just been the train now. It's like just ride that baby. Samuel just with the price. I mean, yeah, 8,200.
Yeah.
A little tougher to swallow, but yeah, you got a lot of value out here. So, yeah, I would play one, but not both together, unless you want to get crazy and play Garoppolo with them. And you can wonder
Yeah, I
why
guess
Kittle runs a reverse in for a touchdown, and Debo has an option touchdown for.
fully can happen, by the way.
You can cry your night away.
And I guess the thing for me is like it's still 9 games, right? But like I'm kind of in this like mental block where like I'm almost looking at it as like a showdown slate or like a Sunday Monday slate where like you got to stack in these raw points. A lineup that's closer to like a cash game build is potentially going to be more viable even in larger fields this week. So that was sort of the thinking that got me there. But certainly understand no one feeling good about clicking the button on Jimmy Garoppolo. So if you're going to go
My
too
thing
high,
about this
you
week
almost
is
have
that
to have their quarterback.
the large field tournament this week, I feel like it's going to be the roster that we see at the end of the day is going to be so ridiculous. Like there's going to be some games and some guys here that go off that are just going to be out of complete left field that are going to be rostered at 1%. And I don't know, man. It just seems like that kind of week. So you got to get weird this week. So
yeah, I mean,
I don't know if playing both of those guys together is getting weird, but I think this is one of those things. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And we will keep the weirdness going. We will move out of the showcase and over to the sale rack. These are the games that ultimately you have to make it a point to stop by and take a look. And if you're willing to dig around a little bit, you will end up more often than not finding at least a couple of things that you're pretty happy with. And the first of those games that we are looking at here is none other than I'm frozen here. The Cincinnati Bengals heading to Denver for a 4-5 game. We're looking at a 44.5 point total, down a half a point. Right now, we are looking at the Broncos as the standard 3-point home favorite. Gives them a 23.75 implied total with the Bengals at 20.75. So of all the games really here on the board, this is the one that is projected to be the closest. It's got a decent enough total at 44.5. Is this a game that you have a good amount of interest in, Mike?
The only person that we should ever have interest in is Melvin Gordon. I love that Williams had a great game and he just outshined him still. Like, it's so perfect. Like, he just will never go away. But talking about the game as a whole here, I do like Cincinnati. I know Denver's defense has been better here, but Chase, and you can never go wrong with running it with the Mixon side of it. So another game that really tough to game stack here. I just don't know. Teddy Bridgewater, I don't think I've clicked his name at all this year in any tournament. Jerry Judy, 5,400. I mean, okay. Noah Fant, 4,400, the tight end position. I don't mind that at all. Sutton's down at 4,600. Like, this just seems like T. Higgins all over again. Throw a 20 piece up there, and I just don't know if it's going to happen at all this year at this point. So yeah, this is just a weird game. Stacking it, I would get weird with stacking this game. Don't mind the quarterback, running back, receiver stack with maybe a receiver on the other side. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, this one's tricky, right? I mean, even though they're all priced down, right? The most expensive Broncos receiver is Jerry Judy at $5,400. It's not going to feel good putting any of them in the lineup. Basically, since Judy has returned, literally none of them have had value. They're all getting 2 to 6 targets a week. and getting like 20 to 50, 55 yards, right? Like the passing game has just really, really cooled off. And, you talked about Melvin Gordon at the top. Like ultimately, Vic Fangio, if it were up to him, would just run the triple option and carry the ball on every single play. So I'm not going to feel clicking the button on these Denver receivers. Flipping over to the Cincinnati side, forever it was just the case where there was this gulf between Jamar Chase's and T. Higgins price tag. Now they're much closer, right? $600 difference, $7,100 for Chase, $6,500 for Higgins, and then you've got that dude Tyler Boyd sitting down there at sub 5K. Do you think that he can maybe get a little bit more action out of the slot? I mean, he's been
That's my guy.
consistent enough, right? He's ranging between 5 and 8 targets almost every single week at sub 5K. No one is going to be on him because everyone wants the big playmaker. Do you think this is maybe a Boyd week where we can get a little leverage on the field?
Oh, I love it, man. Like, yeah, if he could get that touchdown in there. I mean, he's been pretty consistent. Getting 10 to 13 fantasy points 3 of the last 4 weeks. So, he gets that touchdown, it changes everything. It gets closer to that 20-point range. And yeah, I don't mind it. It's going to be tough, though. I mean, fading Jamar Chase and Higgins to play this guy. I kind of like playing, a Burrow with a Chase and a Boyd. But yeah, to be different this week, I don't mind if maybe you just play him with Burrow and a Mixon. That makes a lot of sense as far as being able to be different.
Yeah, I mean, on the whole, I think Mixon is probably going to be a little bit overlooked here, right? He's the third most expensive option of all the running backs out there, and he's coming off of a couple of clunker games, right? 8.5 points last week, 10.5 points the week before, but he's by and large still getting the volume, right? He had 18 and 19 touches in those games respectively. So in a week specifically where at running back there's just so much value on the board, I think Mixon's going to be way under-owned for how involved he is in this game. And I mean, with respect to the favorited Denver Broncos, but I think Cincinnati is going to be in a much more comfortable and controlled game script here against the Broncos. So, I mean, should be plenty of opportunity for young Joe to run wild on this Denver defense.
Well, what about your Denver backfield here?
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, look, Javonte Williams still is seeing his price increase week over week. He's up over 6K now. Melvin Gordon is right around in that same range. I think he's 5,400. If you want to double check me on that, 5,900. Excuse me.
Yeah, 59.
The thing with Gordon is he is questionable with both a thumb and a hip injury. So he's probably the more questionable of the two. If he ends up getting ruled out, Javonte Williams is going to be crazy popular, right?
Yeah.
In absence of that, I mean, I'm not really looking to play either of these players at 6K if they're both available. But that's probably me being a little too short-sighted on just how much Vic Fangio loves to run the ball.
Yeah, I think one of them could get there, but good luck figuring out which one it's going to be.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think either of us are taking enough stabs at this slate to try to cover the basis as to which of those two is going off, right?
Right.
So we will move on to a surprise guest appearance here and the sale rack. Usually the teams that we're talking about next are a bit more of the bargain bin material. But before we do, shout out to my guy Kyle coming in saying what's up.
Kyle, what's up?
Appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us here. I know we opened a bit early, wanted to fit in some time in the punch. This Saturday night football game popped off, so definitely appreciate you coming in with us. And with that, we will head to the bottom of the board. We've got a 1:00 game with the Texans heading over to Jacksonville. with a total below 40, 39.5 points. For maybe the first time ever, the Jags are a 5-point favorite. Gives them a 22.25 implied total. It gives the Texans a 17.25 implied total. And like I mentioned, usually these teams are fodder for the bargain bin, but we got them up here at the sale rack. What do you make of this, Mike? Is this the dead cat bounce from Urban Meyer leaving town, or is there something more at play here?
No, man, Urban, man, he's gone. So, everyone's free to accrue fantasy points on this Jaguars team now. No, I do like Lawrence here, man. 5,100. A lot of times in the NFL season, you'll see rookies towards the end of the year start to, kind of put it together. So, getting a good matchup here, I don't mind him. 5,100. It's a stack here with a Marvin Jones at 40. What is he, 4,600? I mean, it gives you access to, some of the more expensive receivers, the Lambs, we haven't talked about him yet, but Adams. So, I don't mind it at all. And I guess I might be rostering for the first time this year your guy, Davis Mills, with 50 pass attempts last week. So, I don't know. Why don't you talk about the Houston side? Those are your boys.
I've never met any of those boys in my life. Please don't put that on my name. I'm merely a lowly Texan fan. Look, I mean, I think the case for Davis Mills has to be heavily qualified, right? Like you got to be taking rather building multiple lineups. You got to be in the largest of fields out there. More so than anything, my point is like if you're gonna consider $5,500 quarterback, you got to at least take a look at Davis Mills against this Jaguars team that is certainly allowing opposing quarterbacks to score plenty of points. And it looks like Houston is pretty comfortable letting him uncork it for how inaccurate he might be, right? So, if you're going to be down here mucking it up with this caliber of quarterback, Davis Mills is as good as any. The thing that I really like most about this game is sort of the convergence around ownership, right? You mentioned the price tag on Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, he had his best game of his career against the Texans their first time out. Urban Meyer is gone. And because Urban Meyer is gone, I think we'll probably see James Robinson as the chalkiest running back on the board. He's $5,400. Darrell Bevell has already come out and said that he is going to be the starting and featured back. By happenstance, Carlos Hyde has been ruled out the moment that Urban Meyer left town. So, to get into this Jacksonville side of the game with anyone not named James Robinson, I think is a ton of leverage on the field, right? Even if this game stays under 40, if that scoring comes by way of a couple of hookups between T-Law and Marvin Jones, and James Robinson gets the volume but doesn't get into the box, like you are miles ahead of the rest of the field. I don't know if that's kind of the primary consideration and why you like those guys, or if it's more of just a pricing play.
No, that is why, because Robinson should be the most going to get a ton of touches, some targets here. So he's in a smash spot. I mean, I'm going to have quite a few shares of him, but every time it seems like a smash spot, I always like to look at that, the other side of it. And so getting a quarterback receiver stack going with Lawrence and Jones is, something that I'm looking to do in larger field tournaments and even like a winner take all type situation.
Yeah. And honestly, for me, like it feels kind of gross saying this, but if you don't want to go all in on this game, like I totally get it. I would take a look at Marvin Jones at $4,600 as a standalone option, right? Like, I mean, his bar to return value is so low. He's been incredibly consistent here in recent weeks, right? He's got 6 or 7 targets in 5 of his last 6 games. He had a clunker where he had 3. But, I mean, it could be foolish, but I'm buying into the narrative. Marvin Jones followed Darrell Bevell down to Jacksonville. He was his OC in Detroit. He took the job as the OC in Jacksonville. He's now the interim head coach, and Marvin Jones is there to reap the benefit. So even if he has kind of a floor game, you've got a pretty good path to value. But if Darrell Bevell decides to feature the player that he has the best familiarity and relationship with on this team, you could be looking at a $4,600 guy that's going to see double-digit targets. So I would go as far to look at him as a standalone dart to throw if you don't want to be all in on this glorious Texans-Jaguar game.
Oh, man, that's something I don't want to be.
And so we will keep it moving here in the Sales Rack. Our next game up looked to be, at least originally, one of the better ones on the board. Now it seems like injury and player availability breaking the wrong way, and we have the Green Bay Packers staying in the afternoon block, a 4:25 game at the Baltimore Ravens. This is a 43.5 point total. It's come down 4.5 points since opening at 48. We have the Packers sitting as 7-point favorites. They actually opened as a road doggy, but that has flipped. So they are now carrying a 25.25 implied total, with the Ravens all the way down at 18.25 themselves. So the news that I am mentioning is very much so the availability of Lamar Jackson. Sounds like he's going to be a game time decision with that low ankle sprain, but also I tend to look at what teams do and not what they say. And they have acquired the services of one Josh Johnson for additional QB depth there in Baltimore. So all signs in my mind are pointing to a Huntley game there with Lamar Jackson. And that's obviously impacted really the entire makeup of this game. Any particular plays that you think are still viable, or do you maybe have a different take on Lamar Jackson?
Man, I wish Lamar was playing because I would want to play this game a lot more than what I'm going to. But, if he's in, then I don't mind him depending on what the reporting is and how healthy he is, because he can break a slate. I'm going to be on the side of Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. You have to be every slate. Doesn't matter what the matchup is. You get an okay matchup here. Adams 8,900. You shouldn't have too much of a problem fitting. That should be pretty popular this week. On the running back side for Green Bay, both guys. Jones is at 6,600. Dillon's at 5,700. I don't know. It just seems like this is kind of a situation like the Denver situation where it's you can gamble and see which one can really get to that 20-point mark, but it's more of a stay away from me. And then on the Baltimore side, I mean, if Jackson's in play, if he's out, I don't know if I want to roster anyone from Baltimore. And I'd be looking at the Packers defense pretty hard in that scenario.
Yeah, I love the Packers defense call in particular, not only because of the backup signal caller, but also they're pretty reasonably priced. They're $3,300, and they are expected to have Jair Alexander back and available for them. So can certainly take advantage of some mistakes from a backup quarterback under center. The only name that I would maybe take a closer look at that you haven't mentioned is AJ Dillon. More of a price consideration, probably like a small single entry type of play. I mean, all the way down at $5,700. He's had double digit carries several times throughout the year, including games where Aaron Jones is available. Right, he had 15 last time out, 20, 11, 21, 16 a few weeks before that. About half of his games he's getting double digit attempts. So $5,700 is probably a bit too expensive, but if I wanted to get one of the Packers rushers in there in a game where they should win pretty comfortably, ultimately I think it's AJ Dillon at that price tag.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it. It's more of I just kind of want to look toward the quarterback receiver stack there with Rodgers and Adams. But yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of different, we will actually work backwards in the history of the pawn shop. Kyle's jumping back in. He wants to know our thoughts on firing up the Jags defense against those Texans. So they are, as per usual, way down the board. They're sitting at $2,800 as a 5-point home favorite. Is that a dart that you're willing to throw?
Minded. I mean, what, 2,800? Yeah, I mean, anytime a total's under 40, you have to consider both defenses. If it's a closer game here, expected close game. So yeah, I mean, I guess I like guys, teams like the Packers, the Cardinals, there's, the Cowboys. There's just some other teams that I think can really get it done. Have some more playmakers on that side.
That's kind of the thing for me too. Like defenses are pretty reasonable this week, right? Like you can spend 300 and get up to San Francisco, Atlanta. You can get up to Buffalo hosting Carolina. If you're looking for some turnover ability, you can potentially get the Steelers hosting the Titans for $200 more, right? So, I think it's a fair play if you really need every dollar, Kyle. But for just a little bit more, you can get on exponentially better plays with San Francisco, with Buffalo, and even with Pittsburgh. So we will keep trudging along here in the sales rack. Our last game in the sales rack actually is none other than the aforementioned Buffalo Bills hosting the Carolina Panthers in a 1:00 game. This is a 44-point total with the Bills as a 12.5-point favorite. So another huge favorite gives them a 28 1/4 implied total, with Carolina all the way down at 15 3/4. The Panthers themselves may or may not be 3-7 quarterbacks tomorrow. Obviously, Buffalo is still reeling with a somewhat hobbled Josh Allen and coming off of somewhat unjust overtime loss to the defending champion Bucs last week. Any particular storylines that you like here, or plays that are kind of jumping off the board for you?
I'm just glad we've reached the point where we don't have to even consider Cam Newton anymore. So I'm so happy that is final side. I don't I don't see a reason why we shouldn't fire up Allen and Diggs together. We're gonna have the salary to do it. I mean, it's expensive, but I know the total's ugly, but I think they're gonna come out here and just smack these guys around. So definitely looking at Allen and Diggs. I've always been a fan of playing Allen with a Beasley or Sanders. I don't mind the stacking Allen and Diggs with one of those two. So definitely something that on just making sure that you got ways to kind of make different lineups, because I feel like there's going to be a lot of chalk and a lot of plays that people are going to want to go to this week that you're going to see a lot of similar builds. So I know Sanders looks like he's doubtful. I don't know what that means. Obviously, if he's out, I do like Beasley in that scenario. So I guess we'll get some word here tomorrow. And then on the Panther side, I just don't have much interest in tough defense. They're at home, so I don't know if I can click anybody on the Panther side.
Yeah, I guess there are two things at play for me. The first is it looks like by and large Sanders is expected to be out, and so the Buffalo Bills have announced that they're actually going to give Gabe some run as the second receiver. He's $3,700. He's come on a bit of late. He's been seeing increased work in the red zone. He's got touchdowns in 2 straight. So, I would imagine he's going to be one of the more popular plays, just given his price tag. Is that someone that you would consider rostering, or is his ownership something that's going to steer you in a different direction?
Is he going to be that popular? I mean, I don't know. Gabe Davis, I mean, I know he's had, a couple of good games this year. So, I don't mind it. I'm going to have some shares of him. But because if he's going to be popular, then yeah, I'm looking at Beasley a little bit more if Sanders is out.
Yeah, I think, I'm looking at him right now at 9 to 10% roughly. Sub 4K for who's coming off of back-to-back touchdowns and is now announced as the starter. We all know how much DFS players love recency bias and they love them some savings. For whatever it's worth, I'll probably regret saying these words, but if you are looking to take down like a medium-sized single entry field, DJ Moore at 6K is probably a bit too cheap and is certainly going to be way overlooked, right? He's coming off of back-to-back games with 10 targets, hauled in 6 and 4 of those respectively, one of them for 84 yards, one of them for 103. So got you that bonus, and he'll probably be 2 or 3% owned, right? So if you're looking to get into, again, like a 1,000 to 2,000 player single entry field, DJ Moore is going to get you very different and still deliver pretty consistent volume. I don't know if you want off that ledge or if you think it's a worthwhile play.
Oh man, I can't anymore with the Panthers. So most of all of my exposure, honestly, is going to be on the Buffalo Bills side.
That is perfectly fine, and we will move on to the bargain bin. And there are several teams in here that most players just can't with anymore. But ultimately, every now and again, you'll find a diamond in the rough. There'll be some pieces that are worthwhile. And we will start with the Tennessee Titans heading to the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're sitting down at a 43-point game total. The Steelers are a 1.5-point home favorite, so essentially a pick 'em. Leaves them with an implied total of 22, and the Titans at 20 and a half. So the few closer games here on the slate. Obviously, both of these teams have had their struggles of late, especially if you eliminate garbage time from some of the recent Pittsburgh productivity. Any plays in this game that you are zeroing in on, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I've been shouting this guy out for weeks. Probably the only reason why I'm in my own league and season long, I'm even in the playoffs, is Deontay Johnson. I mean, it just continues to just get this crazy volume, and it's just, you can just lock in double-digit targets. The matchup is pretty good, so he's going to make a lot of my builds. 7,500, not going to be hard to get him in there. I'm just I can't do it. Najee Harris, 7,800. Man, just thinking about it, like, I don't mind a lineup where you play Johnson and Harris together, because they just seem to be the guys. And I do kind of like the Pittsburgh side of this game. So I know it's one of the uglier games, but I don't mind it. And, just Claypool, 5,900, like he did last year. It just seems like we've had one ceiling game from him this year. And, that 27-point week, I think it was, earlier in the year. So I think it was like week 4 or 5. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to have some shares. I'll probably have a stack with Johnson and Harris together, just in some like crazier large fields, or even like a winner take all type situation on the Tennessee side. Man, Tannehill's 5,900. I mean, he's gonna have to do everything. Don't know, man. He's just really annoying to roster, because you feel like he's, at that price point, he should be able to smash, and he just can't get it done anymore. The injury concern's always there with him. And then yeah, we went to the well the last week, and it just didn't work out. So I don't mind him just because I feel like a lot of people are going to feel that way. So he's definitely someone that potentially we could target.
Yeah, I'm not going to feel great about Julio, right? It seems like he's still not quite at 100%, and he's certainly subject to being injured or being having his snaps managed on any given week. Oddly enough, I think it largely has to do with some of that garbage time productivity. But a $5,600 Ben Roethlisberger, who's coming off of 20 and 29-point games in his last two, is probably going to draw some ownership, and that's just kind of bad chalk for me. I think a lot of things had to set up right for him to get to that. I don't know if that's going to be the case here in Week 15. And so, with that, we will carry forward to the last stop here in our bargain bin. We are back in the 1 o'clock window. We have the Jets heading to Miami, facing off against the Dolphins in a 41-point total. Miami is another huge favorite, 9.5-point favorite, giving them an implied total of 25.25, with the Jets down at 15.75. So a couple of teams that very much so have been dealing with player availability. Actually, they look to be getting some players back. So anyone in particular that you are clicking the button on this week, Mike?
We got to get our guy Devonte Parker going, right? 4,300. I mean, we've got Waddle. Set to miss here, so definitely makes me like him even too here. 5,700. I mean, you can go out and get all those guys that we kind of talked about earlier, the Adams and the Kittles. With that stack on the Jets side, I guess we can recommend someone like a Crowder, but man, I don't like anybody on that side really.
Yeah. So what's funny about this one, I guess it makes sense with it being a lower projected game. Uh, there's going to be a ton of ownership really on all of the Miami pieces. I was so excited to fire up Devonte Parker when Waddle was still available because my guy's averaging like 8 targets a game when he's out there, and literally no one was going to be looking at him. Now, obviously, he's going to be super chalky. Gesicki's going to be super chalky. Tua is going to be super chalky so that you can afford to get up to those spots. And maybe the only guy who's going to compete with James Robinson in terms of ownership is all the way down at $4,700. It's been activated off of IR. All of the reporting out of New York is that he is going to see a considerable workload here in his first game back. So I think all of that combining with his price tag, I mean, he'll probably be north of 20%. And it's kind of weird to have just sort of a gross game carry as much ownership as it's going to here in Week 15. It sounded like you maybe weren't on the Carter bandwagon.
Nah, man, I don't know. I'm just gonna take a stand here. I get it, but there's a lot of guys that you can play this week, and you're not gonna have a hard time getting up to. Like for me, it's like if I'm gonna play some of these like smaller stacks, and the running backs that I'm going to want to carry this week are guys like, Najee Harris and Joe Mixon. It just seems a little more, it's safer, I feel like, and I feel like they have higher upside. I don't know. I know Carter's had a couple of good games this year, just running away with this thing, and I'm also interested to just kind of see what the Dolphins defense kind of does here. So, it looks like you really just got to focus on, kind of stopping him and Crowder, and there's not much else going on over there.
Yeah, I mean that's perfectly fair, and ultimately, an instance where I'm not going to be super thrilled to have a ton of exposure to this game. It's a solid cash game situation. It's a solid single entry situation. But the guys that are cheap are gonna carry a ton of ownership, and that always makes me a little bit wary. So with that, we will close up shop here at the DFS Pawn Shop. Mike, you want to send us off, tell everyone where they can find the world?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at MCHolland34. I'm listed as the DFS Avenger. You can also find me on DraftKings and those prize pick streets at MCHolland34. I do some work, obviously, for the Going for Two Live network with my guy here, Mr. E. Romoff. And then you can also find me at the Bacon and Egg Show. We're talking about Texas sports, basketball, football recruiting. We just posted a show last week, so check out my Twitter to check that out. I mean, obviously doing some basketball stuff with drroto.com, doing some college stuff, some NBA cheat sheets. So, that's where you can find me.
There you go. And like I mentioned at the top, you can always find me on those Twitter streets at FantasyNav. And with that, we will get out of your way so you can go and enjoy some Saturday NFL football. And we will see you in week number 6.